The roughest, toughest sailor club ever to be built under the 7 seas. Only the baddest of the bad can get in.
That won't be necessary. Go ahead.
Thanks. See you inside, SpongeBob.
Get out of here. This place is too tough for you, little man. I think you'd be more comfortable over at that place.
Weenie Hut Juniors!
Now that I have your attention, welcome back. It's day 2 of class already. Wow, can you believe it? We're actually going to be talking about code first thing in this video. We're going to be looking at data types today. You might recall from the last time that I mentioned it while we were making our simple program. We're going to be talking specifically about what primitive data types there are and how to deal with them. In Python, this isn't really as important, but when you get to languages like C#, Java, and the like, you need to know what type of data you should be using to store the information you want to. First and foremost, we're going to be talking about strings. Strings are like chat messages in a Minecraft server. Strings of characters tied together to make up a message. They're not really interpretable directly by a computer. Usually a human has to go in and tell the computer what the string means in a way that a computer can understand it. An example of when you might see a string in the real world would be, let's say that you own a Christian Minecraft server. One day on this Christian Minecraft server, you're sitting around moderating the chat. You're looking at the logs and all is well in Christiania. But then you realize a big red flag pops up in your output. Little Timmy has decided to drop the hardest of hard R's in your Christian Minecraft server. Clearly we can't have people doing that, but how do we know how to block that word? How do we keep other people from saying the same thing? How do we keep Timmy from saying the same thing again? Well, again, if we go back to the idea that chats are considered strings, strings are just strings of characters taped together. If we use something called an if statement, we can determine if Timmy's chat message is equal to the banned word, which would be the hard R. And if that's true, then we can ban Timmy to the ends of this earth for desecrating such sacred pixels. We'll talk more about if statements in another video, but just know for now, we're trying to see if two things are equal to each other. Now remember when I said that strings are actually comprised of characters? Well, in a string, each one of those characters has an index. And an index is basically how you would look up a word in a dictionary. If you want to find a word, say like apple, you're not going to look in the section starting with the letter Z. You're going to look in the section starting with the letter A. It's the same way with characters. However, you can't really discriminate by the type of character that it is. Each character in a string, instead, has a numerical value indicating where they are in the position of that string. Now, naturally, you might assume that the first character is 1. But no, it's not. It's actually 0. And then, for each letter after that, you increment up by 1. Now, you've probably heard me mention the word characters a lot, and that is referencing each individual letter inside of a string. A character is also considered a type of data in Python, but it's a lot less used because it can only store exactly one character at a time and no more than that. We're going to take a break from the world of characters and strings for a second to talk about Booleans. These are one of the other statements. They're basically binary, but they're more interesting. They come in either true or false, and there's nothing else. There's not really too much super special about them. However, if we can use them to check if two things are equal to each other, they become incredibly useful. For example, in our Timmy situation, we were checking to see if what he said was equivalent to the banned word. If it was, the statement would evaluate to true, which is considered a Boolean statement. We will cover more about Boolean statements in later videos, but know for now that the Boolean data type is either true or false and nothing else. Next, we're going to be talking about integers. These are basically any number from any math class that you've ever taken. You've probably heard about these before. The numbers that we used in our previous video to create that elementary calculator were integers. You might remember me putting my input call in an integer conversion call. If you don't, there's no worries, we'll be talking about that in a second. So let's think about that calculator again. We needed to get user input, which came in as a string type. We would then need to convert it into an integer so that we can perform math, which we do by using conversion statement like int. We need numbers in the integer format or any other numeric format to add them together or do any other math statement to them. If they were strings, it simply would not work. If you add two strings together, instead of adding the numbers together, what they do is something called concatenation. This will be covered in my string manipulation video in further depth, but know for now that when you add two strings together, that effectively combines them together. So if you combine the strings 1 and the string 4, you would get the output of 14 instead of getting the output of 5. Finally, we're going to be talking about two other smaller data types that are also numeric. There's a float, which is similar to an integer, but you're allowed to have decimals. Nothing else is really super special about this data type, which is why I'm not really talking about it a whole lot. But if you have anything like decimals, like money, or statistics or anything like that that requires decimals, you will definitely be using these. And additionally, you also have the complex numbers. In Python, the complex part of a number is represented as j. This data type is basically those answers that you got in Honors Algebra 2 or like pre-calc that were 2i√3 or so on and so forth. But in Python, instead, the I is just represented by a j. Finally, we're going to be talking a little bit about conversion calls because you need to know how to be able to switch between two different data types when you need to. Now, I teased about this in the integer section, but you can convert from one type to another through Python's conversion systems. A simple formula to remember the conversion type in Python, at least, is the following. Whatever the name of your data is, so this could be int, float, string, etc., and then parentheses. Now in some cases, like string, the correct format for that is str followed by parentheses, and integer is also similar with it being int parentheses, but for the most part, most conversions involve typing the literal name of the data that you're converting to, and then parentheses. However, if you have any type of IntelliSense installed, your IDE will assist you in remembering the format. Unless, of course, you're a GigaChad who codes on Notepad. Wrapping up what we've learned today, we learned a little bit about how to interact with strings, booleans, integers, floats, and complexes. I also taught you a little bit about how to use conversion calls, allowing you to safely manipulate your data to other types without worrying about losing information. Hopefully now, armed with this knowledge, you'll be able to know when and where to use the right data to store the right information. Thank you for sticking around. Today we learned about the primitive types of data in Python and how they interact with one another. If you're interested in learning more, don't forget to hit that wonderful big red nuke button. You totally won't destroy my home and all that I love. If you don't want to miss another video, ring that bell as loud as you can to stay up to date with my Taught by an Idiot series. In our next video, we will describe how if statements work. See you next time. Don't melt trying to code while I'm away.